opposed to one of the main unionist parties. Those are all very big issues that we certainly are conscious of. We're not complacent about, but we don't read into the data that a united Ireland is likely anytime soon, or that indeed a border poll is justified.
What kind of metrics would the Secretary of State have to use to convince you that, yeah, it's calling a poll is justified? Well, opinion polls are all over the place, depending upon the methodology. You've got the Lucid poll, it uses one methodology. You've got Irish Life and Time, a different one. You've got Lord Ashcroft, a different one. You've got the Morley Ipsos poll. They're all different.
Yeah, but there's differences in credibility in some of those polls too. I mean, the most credible. University of Liverpool did a recent survey, which was pretty important, I think, and significant. Yeah. The Life and Times, the Life and Times survey is the most credible of all. I mean, you get into Lucid poll. I don't want to be disparaging, but it's a completely different order of credibility altogether. I mean, an internet operation which is susceptible to all sorts of things happening to it. But look, I mean, let's go back to the basics. So the border poll, I see the Sinn Féin put adverts in American newspapers recently, I think around about St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, yes.
Yeah, saying that the border poll was legislated for or provided for in the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. Of course, they made it appear that this was a sort of mandatory part of the Belfast Agreement. If you're going to agree with the Good Friday Agreement, you had to have a border poll. Of course, it said nothing of the sort. And those who crafted it, and remember Sinn Féin, who are big supporters of the Good Friday Agreement now, didn't give it its support at the outset, as you know, having followed these things closely over many years. They basically reserved their position when John Hume and David Trimble signed the deal, and George Mitchell had everybody together. They went off and confabed for a couple of months and to see which way the wind was blowing. So it wasn't as if they were mighty supporters of it. But the Belfast Agreement was left ambiguous on the point of the border poll deliberately, and it didn't include any matrix or any conditions. And we're not going to start filling in the gaps on that now.
So unionism and English nationalism. Many commentators and reports now say that above all Brexit was about English nationalism, and that in the future, fairly short future, that the unwitting combination of a Scottish nationalism and English nationalism might be more a driver of events in Northern Ireland than anything else. What would happen if Scotland went independent? What happens when the Union maybe starts disintegrating as the Union? Where do you find your place then? And you're faced with a Britain that really doesn't care if you're part of it or not. They care about Scotland, but Northern Ireland, if they want to go, they can go. If it starts disintegrating, where does that leave you?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that the biggest threat to the Union at the moment is Scottish independence, not Northern Ireland leaving the Union, and not a united Ireland. I mean, that is a fact. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 5 or 6 weeks with the Scottish elections and all of that. I'm sure you've been following this sturgeon salmon blow by blow. Anyway, we'll see what happens in that. But look, I think that there's no doubt that at the time of the last referendum in Scotland, when it was becoming very, very close, a lot of unionists who I mean, basically the Ulster Scots, I mean, a strong affinity to Scotland, more so than to England, were deeply worried and concerned about the prospect of Scotland leaving, and undoubtedly that would be the same and is the same today. It's something of that magnitude is hard to sort of to look at theoretically